guys, gals, and interdimensional beings that may be listening out there. I'm Mitchell Hall, and you're listening to Mitchell's Mystery Hour. Why is it a mystery, you ask? Because it's a new topic every single week. So I hope all you guys are staying safe out there during this whole, pandemic thing. I know we've certainly had our fair share of insane things happening all around the country. But today we're gonna be talking about something that really is affected by the pandemic, and it's grocery stores. So to me, we're talking about my personal experiences with working at my local grocery store, and just some funny stories that hopefully will make you guys laugh. So let me describe this grocery store to you. It's a nice little quaint place in the middle of the city, with we have managers, the big cheeses as we like to call them. They're the guys who run the show, and then below them there are smaller supervisors who kind of run the show, but they still answer to the managers. I unfortunately am not one of them. I'm just a cashier myself, which is mostly my response to customers who end up just yelling at me the whole time. They're saying, why is this not bagged right, or why do I have to wear a mask? And my response is, sir and or ma'am, we don't discriminate. I just work here, okay? I'm just a cashier. You got a problem, you got to take it up with the big cheeses, okay? I'm just a cashier. And that usually ends up just making them more and more angry, and then they'll just yell at me some more. And then hopefully the supervisor or manager will step in. But so let me describe how a normal day at the store goes for me. So I wake up in the morning. I make my coffee. I go to school because I'm working along with being at the school doing my schoolwork. So I'll go to school and then I'll end up going to work. And I leave. It's been a good day at school. I finally think to myself, yeah, I get to go home. And as soon as I get in my car, I look at my phone and I go, yep, I gotta go to work. So I'm on my way to work, and of course, with my luck, I hit every single red light that the local city has to offer. And they don't even. I feel like they don't even feel bad about it. I feel like they put the red lights there for me to get stuck on purpose. So I'm already late. I'm already late getting there, and as soon as I get into the parking lot, I'm not saying that I'm a perfect driver, but we definitely have a lot of crazy customers that don't follow our. We have like a 10 mile per hour speed limit in the parking lot, as most people do. But of course, there's always that person that's driving a sports car that feels the need to drive 80 through the parking lot, like they're in a Fast and Furious movie almost. And I pull in there, and a normal day I can get in there no problem. But then there's always those special days where I'm beginning to pull into the parking lot, and somebody flies up next to me, almost running me off the road. And I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, that's just added to the list for the day. So there I am. I finally get into work, and I punch in. I'm already late. Because with the red lights, of course, every single day. But I punch in. My manager. The first thing my manager asks me is, "Why are you late?" And my response is that there is Vin Diesel on the road going to run me off because he's filming for a Fast and Furious movie. So after I punched in, I count my drawer, and I open up on a register. Maybe an hour or two goes by, serving customers. Some good, some bad, but then it always comes to that one. I don't want to necessarily say Karen, but it's a Karen, guys. We all know. A Karen comes up with no mask on, and for my store, we have a strict policy of if you don't wear a mask, you don't get served. So, unfortunately, that's just how it is. Even if they have breathing problems, we don't want to make it hard for people. We have our own grocery delivery service that can easily deliver the food for you if you have a problem. But and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Karen. It could always be a guy too. They just come to the register and they're not wearing a mask. And my first thought is, the rules. You shop here every day. You're looking for a fight. You honestly you want to argue, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Now I'm gonna have to tell this person to put their mask on, and then they're gonna yell at me. And I'm like, well, all right, let's just get it over with. So for example, yesterday I looked at this woman, and she was nice at first. She was a kind, sweet, older lady. And I'm like, Miss, you need to put your mask on if you're going to be in the store. And she's like, it affects my breathing. I don't want to put it on. And I think you should just leave me alone so I can check out my groceries. And I'm like, well, ma'am, I'm just a cashier and I just follow the rules that are put in place, okay? So if you want, we can get you a mask and then we can check you out. But if you don't want to wear a mask, then we cannot serve you. And she almost ignores me. She, actually she runs me over with the cart and runs my foot over with the cart to force her way past me. And then I'm on the ground because she almost like crushes me with the cart. And I get up and I'm just furious. I'm like, oh no, like I tried to give you the benefit of the doubt and now it's over. Like playtime is over. It is time to go. So I'm like, ma'am, you either put a mask on or you will leave the store. There is no doubt about it. And the supervisors, my bosses wanted to get involved, and I said, no guys, she ran me over with the cart. It is me who is taking care of this. So I said, Miss, you need to put your mask on or you will not be served. She turns around with this look of, I don't know if it's necessarily anger or maybe I think it's just pure rage. And she raises her cane to me. She's like let's get something straight, guys. This is an 80-some-year-old woman who looks like she wants to actually swing on me with this cane. And my first thought is, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to like fight this 80-year-old woman who's going to like attack me in the store. She raises her cane, and she looks at me and she says, "Leave me alone, or I will swing you with this. I will swing this cane at you." And that's when the supervisor decided to step in, and he reached for the cane to take it out of her hands because she was gonna swing the cane at me. I felt threatened because I understand she's an 80-some-year-old woman, but I don't feel like taking a shot to the head with a metal cane. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that feels very good. So we ended up calling the authorities because she refused to leave the store. So luckily the police came and there was no other scene. She was refusing to leave the store, so we had to call the authorities. They came and they luckily were able to get her out without an incident. Because my first thought is, if she swings a cane at this cop, I don't quite understand how he's going to react. But I'm honestly hoping that she never comes in again. But we're just gonna have to see what happens. Like actually, part of me wants to see her come in because I kind of want to see what she's gonna do. But yeah. So that wraps up the first segment of Mitchell's Mystery Hour. So tune in in a few minutes, where we'll be talking about more fun at my local grocery store. Alrighty, ladies and gents, welcome back to Mitchell's Mystery Hour, where your favorite weirdo, me, talks about funny stories that happened at my local grocery store that I work at. But so yeah, before we went to commercial, we were talking about a 80-some-year-old woman that threatened to attack me essentially with a cane because I wouldn't let her leave without putting a mask on. But yeah, so it also brings me to like I said earlier, like I said a couple minutes ago, that people that don't want to wear a mask are just looking for a fight. And another good story I have is an older gentleman who came in, and he wasn't the troublesome one. It was another elderly woman that refused to put her mask on. This actually happened 2 days ago, and he's we're gonna call him Frank. His name's not actually Frank, but we're just gonna call him Frank. Frank is one of the sweetest guys that you'd ever meet. And when this elderly woman refused to put her mask on, it was actually a couple. They both refused to put their masks on, and I gave them the same speech that I give every single person, that if you don't put your mask on, you're not going to get served. It's just that simple. And they began to yell at me, and yelling from one person is perfectly fine. I deal with that every day. I could take one person yelling at me, but as soon as there's 2 or more, it starts to become a problem because I don't know. I'm getting tag teamed from both sides, and that's when it eventually becomes a problem for me. And luckily, Frank, this elderly gentleman, stepped in, and he pointed a finger at them, and he had anger in his eyes. And luckily, it was wasn't directed towards me. It was directed towards these people who are making fools out of themselves. He looks at them and he goes, "You leave him alone. He did nothing to you guys. He's just following his job." And the woman almost throws herself into her husband because she's like shocked out of her mind. She's like, Who do you think you are talking to me that way? Talking to us that way? Do you know who we are?" And the kind gentleman, he looks at them, and his response is simply, "I don't care who you are." That doesn't give you the right to talk to any grocery employees that way when they're working hard to try and keep you people satisfied. And I'm like, wow, this mysterious man is essentially my savior. He's my Superman. So Frank's one of the sweetest guys you're ever gonna meet. He's just I can't even put into words. And every time, it's not just me though who's getting yelled at. It's other grocery store employees that are getting yelled at as well. Not even for just not wearing a mask. It's getting yelled at for nonsense things, like if something's not put into a bag right, or if a price isn't the right price. It's total nonsense things like that. And this kind gentleman always stands up for the cashiers. He's always yelling at the people for us, essentially making our job pretty easier, because we don't have to deal with them as much as he does. Like, he just yells at them, so which definitely helps a lot. He's always sticking up for us, and he's always I can't even put into words. He's just such a nice guy, and I'm really glad that we have people like him that shop at our place to help us deal with problem customers. But so yeah, I'm gonna be moving on to some of my better coworkers. We're not gonna talk about the bad ones. For anyone who's listening, we're not gonna talk about the bad coworkers. We're gonna talk about the good coworkers. The first coworker is one of my bosses. He's a supervisor at my place. His name is TJ Wozniak, the one and the only, as I refer to him, the man, the myth, the legend himself. So TJ has the best personality that you could honestly ask for in someone when you want to have a conversation. He's always got something positive and or negative to say about somebody, and that's the best part of him, because he always keeps you on your toes. If I could have a word for TJ, it would be "I just work here." That would be the word I would use to describe TJ, because every time a customer has a complaint, I feel bad for him, because he's the one that has to deal with that. He has to approach the customer and calm them down. And he has a simple approach. If a customer is not happy, he'll approach them, and he'll say, and he'll introduce himself. He'll say, "Hello, hello, sir or ma'am. My name is TJ. I'm the supervisor here. How can I help you?" And they usually respond angrily if they're a rude customer. They're usually yelling at him, and he tries to help, and he tries to give him the benefit of the doubt. Tries to help in any way he can. But once you push him too far, that's when he turns. It's like a switch almost. He switches to the "I just work here" TJ. And if there's nothing that he can do, if they honestly, if they want their money back, and there's unfortunately there's just nothing we can do, which sometimes that happens, his response is, "There's nothing I can do. I just work here." And it almost makes the rest of the people around him laugh, because it's just so funny, and I feel like us laughing at him shutting these angry customers down is what makes the angry customers laugh more. But that definitely is what makes us laugh, is him just shutting down angry customers that don't want to have it. They just don't want to listen. Like for example, it's a bright was it Wednesday or Thursday? It was Thursday. It was a bright Thursday afternoon, and it's quiet in the store. We're just sitting there. And a man comes stomping through the store angrily. First of all, he doesn't have his mask on, so that's problem number one. Second of all, he comes up to the counter with a box of opened pie tin, and he slams the pie tin on the table, and he goes, and there's already half of this pie is missing already, and he's looking at us angrily, and he goes, "I want a refund for this pie. It's not the right one." And TJ and I look at each other. We're puzzled, and we're like, "Sir, but we could give you a refund if you hadn't opened it yet, but you already ate half the pie, so there's really nothing we can do." So he didn't like that. So what he did was he felt the need to take his pie and football spike it on the ground for the entire store around him to see. And at that point TJ just, the switch flipped, and he's just like, "Sir, leave the store." And that only, made him freak out even more. So we ended up calling in our head honcho, the big cheese, the main person who runs the store. So we had to force this guy to leave. Luckily, we didn't have to call the authorities like the 80-some-year-old woman with the cane. But yeah, he was lucky enough. He was fortunate to leave the store without an incident. But yeah, guys. So on the next segment of Mitch's Mystery Hour in 2 minutes, we'll be talking more about the one, the only TJ Wozniak, ladies and gents. Alrighty, ladies and gents, welcome back to Mitchell's Mystery Hour, where your favorite weirdo, me, talks about funny things that happen at our local grocery store that I happen to work at. So I've been there for 5 years now. We were talking about TJ, the one, the only, TJ Wozniak, or as I recall to him, the man, the myth, the legend. So yeah, the best story though that I ever could tell you about TJ is hands down is a customer. I had a kind woman. She's super sweet. She's like in her late 30s. She comes up to me. I don't know if she's related to TJ or not, but she looks back at TJ to make sure he's not looking directly towards us. Looks at me and she's like, "Oh my goodness, like I love his hair." And I'll give TJ this. His hair is definitely phenomenal. His hairstyle is what I shoot for. And the way I can describe it to you, the customer described it to me. She said it's almost like Jimmy Neutron and Elvis. Their hair got together, and his hair is what you get. And I'm like, and I'm on the floor, almost on the floor, dropping a lung because I'm laughing so hard. And she's like, I don't actually want to tell him that because then it would be weird. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's still weird that you're telling a random cashier and not him himself. But and I'm like, well, I look back at him and I look back at her and I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's Jimmy Neutron meets Elvis, and it's honestly, I think his hair looks great to me, and I'm not the only cashier. Many other cashiers, not to be weird, but mostly female cashiers have complimented him on his hair, and they make it a point to compliment TJ on his hair, and I definitely think it's worth talking about. Okay, so and then another good story I have with TJ is we're sitting alone. It's just there's three of us here. There's three of us, me, TJ, and another cashier whose name won't be mentioned. But the three of us are sitting in the store. It's quiet. It's like 10-20 minutes before we close, and we noticed that our hand sanitizer bottles are running low because during a pandemic you gotta have hand sanitizer because it's liquid gold. But yeah, so we have our own sanitizer bottles that we use for the store, and we usually buy just giant bottles like Sam's Club would sell, and we just refill the smaller bottles. So the large bottle didn't have a nozzle like it should have. So TJ comes up with this brilliant idea to use printer paper and build up, and he's like, hey man, let's build a funnel with this printer paper so we can fill up the bottles of sanitizer. And my first thought is, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? And then he's like, listen, man, I'm just trying to get a laugh out of this day, man. It's been so quiet. We just need something funny to happen. And I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, there are so many things that could go wrong here, but I like the idea and we're gonna do it. So here we go into our main office. We take a bunch of paper. We take three things of paper and fold them up into a big funnel, and we throw some tape around it to hold it together as a funnel. And we stick the funnel inside of the small bottle of sanitizer, just like a regular funnel, and we begin to pour pour the sanitizer from the larger bottle into the smaller bottle. And all I have to say to that is, yeah, that was a bad idea. Because as soon as we poured it in, the paper got soggy, and it wasn't strong enough to hold the sanitizer, and the sanitizer went all over the counter. And, you know, my first thought is that, great, now we have to clean all this up, so what are we going to do now? And next thing you know, our boss, the big cheese, comes out, and, you know, he can get a laugh out of stuff, but he had that look on his face like he was not playing around today because of how bad of a day it was. And he looks at us, and he simply closes his eyes and takes a big 10-minute deep breath. And I'm like, I'm just bracing for it. I'm like, we gotta find cover because the storm's coming. He opens his eyes after taking this deep breath, and his first question to us is, "What are you two doing?" And I'm like, well, TJ, do you want to tell him? And TJ's like, no, man, you can tell him. And I'm like, well, thanks, man, for, you know, throwing me off a cliff and, you know, throwing me under the bus after I fell down the cliff. And I'm like, we're building a funnel out of printer paper to refill our hand sanitizer bottles. Nothing too serious. And he's like, his eyes widen like an owl, and he goes, nothing too serious? You got sanitizer all over the counters. Like, who's going to clean this up now? And I'm like, well, I guess I have to. And I'm like, because TJ won't do it. And then TJ's response is, you're too serious, man. You got to calm down. And my manager's next response cracks me up to this day. He simply takes another deep breath. This one was longer, like he's trying to almost compose himself. He simply just walks away. And when he's walking away, we can hear him in the distance saying, go get some paper towels and clean up the sanitizer. There's a special nozzle for the bottles inside the office. Go get it. And my first thought is, like, I better do this before I get fired, because I don't want to I wasn't planning on getting fired today. So we go and we fix the bottle. We clean up the counters. Everything's all well and good. We go and get the nozzle. We insert the special nozzle into the bottle to refill our sanitizer bottles. 10 minutes of trying, the nozzle doesn't work. And I'm like, well, TJ, the nozzle doesn't work, so what do we do now? And TJ looks at me, and he goes, I think if we use 5 pieces of printer paper, it'll work this time. And I'm like, I don't think so. And he's like, you want to find out? And I'm like, of course I do. So we go into the office, and we get 5 pieces of printer paper this time. And we ended up filling all the bottles of sanitizer with printer paper. I was quite surprised. I didn't think it would work. I almost want to call TJ the new Bill Nye the Science Guy, because, you know, I didn't think it would actually work. But I was impressed. He impressed me. You know, it only angered our manager even more, but I think he was just having a bad day. And I think that you know, out of the box ideas aren't necessarily bad ideas. But yeah. And then another good story. That's like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to TJ. One of if not the best story that I can remember including TJ, is a younger customer. She was about 17, 18 maybe, and she's with her friends. You know, they're the classic, you know, cheerleader types. They're laughing and giggling and checking their Snapchat and Instagram, which is perfectly fine. But, you know, they fit that. Unfortunately, they were cracking up, and, you know, she was almost like too interested in TJ, you know. But yeah, we'll talk more about that on our next segment of Mitchell's Mystery Hour. So stay tuned, guys. Welcome back, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Mitchell's Mystery Hour. We were talking about the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, TJ Wozniak himself, and some funny stories that I've definitely encountered with him over the past couple of years. So, as I was saying before, there was a younger woman who came in. She was a young lady, about 17 or 18 or so, and she's getting a little too happy being checked out by, you know, her stuff being checked out by TJ. She's like, what's your Instagram? And TJ's like, it's my name. And she's like, well, what's your name? And he's like, it's Theodore. And And I'm like, okay, I'm like, wow, like what's going on here? Like this is almost making me like cringe. So she's finished. She's finally finished checking out. She said there's like 3 items. It shouldn't take 20 minutes to check out 3 items. So she's. I feel like she's purposely making more time to try and get TJ's social media, and I'm like, see, that would be okay if it wasn't TJ. You know what I mean? Because I was like, one day we were just chilling, and I'm like, TJ, what's the dating life looking like? And TJ looks at me, and his response is, bro, if it's not related to school or this place, I'm not interested right now. And I'm like, okay, so that pretty much sets the tone for any future things that come up. So this girl and her 2 friends are, they're still in the store. They're already checked out. And I'm like, well, what are they still doing in the store? They're huddled huddled together in their group of 3. They're giggling about something, and I'm like, well, what are they giggling about? So it turns out I was like peeking around, listening to their story, and she's looking at TJ's Instagram, and I'm like, don't do this, please don't. This isn't gonna end well for you because I know TJ too well. This isn't gonna end well. Don't do it. And then her one friend looks at her, and she goes, are you gonna shoot your shot? Are you gonna ask him out? And the first thing that went through my head was that exact same quote that TJ told me like a year ago. If it doesn't pertain to school or the store, it's a no-go for him. And I'm like, no, don't do this. I'm like, I feel like I should get involved, but if I do get involved, that means I was listening, and I don't want to do it. And so I just let it all play out. And she takes a step forward, and it almost like she has a concerned look, and then she ends up leaving the store with her 2 friends. And I'm like, whew, crisis averted. So I go up to TJ, and I'm like, TJ, you're never gonna believe this, man, but this girl was thinking about asking you out, bro. I think she was definitely gonna do it. And then TJ looks at me, and he goes, I'm glad she didn't. And I almost couldn't breathe because I was laughing so hard. It was just so funny. That was the first time I've ever seen a customer like think about asking an employee out on a date type setting. It was definitely one of my favorite TJ moments because I'm really afraid of what he would have said to her. I was like, TJ, if she say so, not like it was like a half hour later. It's still quiet. We're sitting there, and my first thought is I gotta ask TJ what he really would have said, kind of like a what if type deal. So I walk up to TJ and I go, TJ, what would you really have said to her if she asked you out somewhere? And TJ's response was, I would have said no, man. She's definitely possibly too young for me. She's definitely not in my league. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate because he just I don't know what it is, man. I think it's his hair. Like going back to the segment ago, I think it's his hair. It has some sort of radiating like aura that draws people to it, and I'm definitely thinking that it was the hair that made this girl like want to ask for his Instagram because it was whew. So, and then he just TJ's one of a kind, man. He's definitely someone that can't be imitated or copied off of. But yeah, enough about the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, TJ himself. We're going to be moving on to another one of my favorite coworkers, the one and the only Jeff Falchuk. So Jeff, unlike TJ, TJ's in college. Jeff, he's younger. He's a senior in high school, but he still knows the struggles that TJ and I go through because Jeff's a higher up as well. So yeah, Jeff, he's one of the funniest guys that you would ever meet in your life. Not only is he funny, but he's also down to earth. If you're going through a bad time, even not just me, all the other cashiers in the store, they always gravitate towards Jeff because Jeff's that shoulder to cry on. Not necessarily cry on, but because you don't want to cry in public and make a scene. But he's definitely that person to lean on that you can talk to. And even if I'm having a bad day, he's definitely the first person I look for if he's there, to talk to, because TJ's funny, but Jeff's the man. He's the I don't know what really to call him. He's definitely the life advice giver that you definitely need in your life. If I could have Jeff follow me around every day and just give me good advice, that's definitely what I would do. For example, one day I saw all these people, all my friends who are outside of work. They all have relationships. They're all nice and happy with their others, and I'm like, man, I'm single right now, but I'm kind of lonely, bro. And it's kind of it was funny, but at the same time it's kind of sad, because I'm like, I see all these people happy around me, and I'm like, well, I wish I had somebody that I could lean on. And Jeff's the first person I spoke to when I went into work, and I'm like, Jeff, I'm lonely, man. Like, I don't know. I wish I had wish I could ask a girl out and take a girl out on a nice dinner, maybe, and Jeff's like, don't worry, man, you'll be okay. He's like, I have faith that you'll meet that special someone. I know you will. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it was just Jeff's words, but they radiated inside me. I felt like instantly happy again. I'm like, wow, maybe I do have a chance. I'm like, Jeff, you know what? You should follow me around all day and then just give me good advice while we're here at work, because walking into the store filled with lines of 10 people going through the aisles, it's not good. And I'm like, great, just another thing to add to the day that would make me depressed. And luckily Jeff was there for good advice. He wasn't there to follow me around, unfortunately, but yeah, honestly, if I could have Jeff follow me around all day, he would definitely be the person that I would pay to follow me around and give me inspirational advice, because he's just so inspirational. But yeah, guys, on the next segment of Mitchell's Mystery Hour in 2 minutes, we're going to be talking more about the one, the only, Jeff the Supervisor. Alrighty, ladies and gents, welcome back to Mitchell's Mystery Hour, where your favorite weirdo, me, talks about the one, the only, TJ, and the one, the only, Jeff, our lovely supervisors who work at my grocery store. So, another good thing about Jeff is that he doesn't back down. Jeff will stand, if a customer is wrong, Jeff is going to let them know. He's not going to stand for them. I know the so-called quote is that the customer is always right. And, that's not always true. That's lies. That's lies, because 90% of the time the customers are wrong. And when they're wrong, Jeff's going to let them know. A lady came in, and she had this brand, I don't even remember, it was a brand of cake. Different, like mini peanut butter cakes. It was a brand that was completely different from the ones that were on sale. She comes up to the register, and she goes, "These weren't up for the sale price." And Jeff, being as a great supervisor as he is, he goes and checks the price, and because we have signs with large writing that say what is on sale and what is not. So Jeff, and every single time he'll do is he'll take the sign off the shelf and bring it up there to prove to the customers that they're wrong. He brings the sign up with a box of the correct brand that's on sale of these cakes, and he goes, "Miss, I'm sorry, but the ones you have aren't the ones that are on sale. These ones are the ones that are on sale." And her response, she was confused almost, and I'm just thinking, I can't say it out loud obviously, because there'll be repercussions for me, and my thought is, "Ma'am, why do you look so confused? You got the wrong ones. It's not that difficult to understand." So Jeff puts the sign down to show her specifically what brand is on sale, and her question, it didn't sit right with me, because it's almost like she still didn't understand. Her question was, "Can I get this one for the sale price of that one?" And my thought, I'm like, no, that's not how it works. If you want this, but this, if you want one thing, but another thing is on sale, we're not going to give you this one thing for this other thing's sale price, because that's not how any store works in my that I know of, unless there's a store somewhere else that I don't know of that operates that way. But yeah, we're just like, "Miss, this isn't on sale. We can't do that." And then she's like, "Well, I want to see the manager." And then Jeff's response is, I am the manager. And we're just like, and my first thought is, haha, you can't do anything, your argument's shut down. And her next question is there someone above you? And I sigh, and I'm like, great, now this lady is going to want to talk to the higher up, who we're going to have to drag all the way from the back of the store, like a football field away. Now they have to walk all the way up here to tell this ignorant lady the exact same thing that Jeff told her. So we're better to not make a scene. We call up our big cheese, the head manager. So he comes up. He's already annoyed because we called him up here from a football field away. And the lady begins to ask him about this question by yelling at him, which is not a good way to start, in my opinion. I don't know how. I usually don't like getting in arguments, but her first thought is to yell at him, and I'm like, that's just not how you want to negotiate with somebody. And my manager's like, all right, what's going on? And the lady's like, these are supposed to be on sale, and Jeff instantly jumps in because this lady's wrong. She's trying to say that an item's on sale when it's not. So Jeff's response to our manager is, no, it's not. There's signs right here that says what's on sale. So my manager leaves to go check where the supposed sale item is on the shelf, leaving us here with this lady who's already fuming. She's fuming, looking at the two of us, staring into our very souls. And we're like, please come back, please come back. So he comes back he comes back up from looking at her item that she said was supposed to be on sale. And his response to her is, Miss, these aren't on sale. And I'm like, well, great. He just told her exactly what we just told her. He had to waste 10 minutes of his time walking up here from a football field away. And she asks, is there any way I can get these on sale for the sale price of that item? And my manager had the exact same confused look that she did when we told her that her item wasn't on sale. He's like, no, ma'am, we don't operate that way. And her response is unbelievable. She got so angry that she took her item, obviously, because she paid for these cakes. Like, she's not gonna leave them here. She takes her cakes and starts to stomp out of the store. And I'm like, all right, well, I tell her to have a nice day. And that only infuriated her more. I probably shouldn't have done that, but I was just trying to be courteous. She turns around and yells, it just as at the top of her lungs, as loud as the store can hear her. She yells, "I'm never shopping here again." And the manager follows her outside. And what's Jeff's response to this whole thing? To me, he looks at me, and he goes, "Man, I'm just tired of these people making a scene." And I'm just like, yeah, you and me both, Jeff. But he doesn't back down. He when the customer's wrong, he'll tell you. But yeah, and then his I think Jeff's favorite thing is telling customers to put their mask on if they're not wearing one, because it's just downright ignorant at this point for someone not to wear a mask. And it's like I said before, like, people who don't wear one are looking for a fight. So there was an older gentleman who came in, and he wasn't wearing a mask, and he's in a little one of our motorized scooters that we have at, hit a max of like 20 miles per hour driving around the store. And we're just like, sir, Jeff, he comes up to the counter, and Jeff tells him calmly, "Sir, you need to put a mask on to be in the store." And this guy's response is that it affects his breathing and that he can't wear a mask. And Jeff, he gives him the usual speech that we have. We usually, when a customer says they have a breathing issue, we have to go through the whole layout that we have a grocery delivery service for people who don't want to go out. And he spends 10 minutes giving him the whole spiel that we give all the customers. And then he still at that point he still refuses to put the mask on. And Jeff is like, I can see it in his eyes. He's getting irritated. But and Jeff's like, "Sir, you need to put a mask on to be served in the store." That's the second time he told him. But he wasn't having it. And we'll get to the rest of that story when we come back on the next segment of Mitchell's Mystery Hour. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Alrighty, ladies and gents, welcome back to the final segment of Mitchell's Mystery Hour, where the one, the only, me, Mitchell Hall, talks about funny experiences that happened at my local grocery store that I worked at. So yeah, we are talking about Jeff, the one and the only, Jeff the supervisor, as we call him, who doesn't back down to customers. The last segment we were talking about an angry old man who refused to put a mask on after Jeff told him twice to put the mask on. And I could tell this guy is just looking for a fight. He looks at us and he goes, "I'm not gonna put a mask on." And Jeff almost like was shocked. Like I was shocked that he said that. He just straight up told us that he wasn't gonna put a mask on. And then Jeff was like, "All right, sir. Well, then you leave me no choice. If you refuse to put a mask on, then you just won't be served." And the guy was like confused for a second. He looks at us and he goes, "Are you telling me that you are going to refuse to serve me if I don't put a mask on? Even though the mask affects my breathing and causes me problems?" And Jeff looks at me and then looks at the guy. I shrug my shoulders, and Jeff's like, "Yeah, I guess so." Honestly, he was so shocked that he had to ask us a second time. He's like, and he got louder the second time. He's loud enough for the whole store to hear. And he goes, "So you're going to refuse to service me if I don't put a mask on?" And Jeff, for the second time, tells him, "Yeah, I guess so." So he takes all the stuff that he had already put on the belt and just extreme couponers it onto the floor and begins to leave the store. And I'm like, oh no, like he just like made a mess of my entire station, my entire area, and I'm like, I'm not gonna have this. So I turn around and I tell the guy to have a lovely day. Luckily, I'm trying to keep my composure. I told the guy, have a lovely day. Hopefully he would leave the store. And for some unknown reason, me telling him that set him off completely. He turned around with a look of rage, and I'm like, this guy's gonna swing on us, and now we're gonna have to now we're really gonna have a problem. And the guy comes walking. He's already almost out of the store in our main lobby. He comes walking all the way back down the store, and I'm like, really, just leave. Why are you coming back here? And he looks at us and he goes, "Don't you think that's a little condescending, forcing me to leave the store and then telling me to have a nice day?" And I look at him and I go, "Sir, nobody's forcing you to leave the store. You're actually forcing yourself to leave the store because you refuse to put your mask on." And he kept getting louder and louder with us, asking us the same questions over and over again about how it affects his breathing. And Jeff was like, "Sir, we're private property. We don't operate under the regular guidelines. We have our own guidelines. So you either follow them or you don't get served in the store. If you have a breathing issue, you can use our grocery order to get food if you don't want to go out. You shouldn't be out if you have a breathing problem anyway." And the guy looks at me. Jeff's the one who's telling him this, and he looks at me. The guy looks at me and he goes, "I've dealt with you before. You personally look for ways to get under my skin." And I'm like, I'm so confused because the guy's right though. I have dealt with him before, and I guess what he refers to as getting under his skin is telling him to put a mask on because he refuses to follow our guidelines every single time he's in the store. So apparently I get under customers' skin, and it makes me laugh anyway. But yeah, so Jeff steps in and he puts a hand up almost to stop the customer in his tracks. He puts his hand up, and of course with someone who's yelling, the best way to end the argument is to yell louder. So you're louder than them, of course. That's how we settle arguments at the store with angry customers. So Jeff gets louder and he goes, "Sir, I'm not going to go back and forth with you wasting my time. You either put a mask on and you buy your groceries, or you leave the store and you don't get served. It's just as simple as that." So the guy he pauses for a minute, almost trying to think of something to say, because I feel like he was hoping that to get some more satisfaction out of Jeff arguing with him. But Jeff shut the argument down real quick. It's this way or the highway, and you take your pick. And he chose the highway. He walked out, and he just shook his head and basically called us a lot of unmentionable names that I can't say on the radio. But yeah, after he left, Jeff and I were, we were crying laughing, even though he had a very expensive order to put away. That was like I don't know, like $200 worth of stuff that we had to put away. So we had to put that stuff away. But it was definitely worth it to go back and forth with the guy, because even though I don't like when customers yell at me, I don't like when they yell at me, but it gives me some entertainment at least. It gets me through a quiet day, going back and forth with people. Jeff's not that way. He doesn't like going back and forth, but yeah, he put the argument down real quick. He said, you either wear a mask or you don't get served, and it's just that simple. And that actually happened recently, so that's definitely a memory of Jeff being in charge of the store that I'll always remember, because it just always makes me laugh when I think of it, because of how angry the guy was. And I guess telling him to have a lovely day was a little condescending, but I feel like he deserved it, because every single time the gentleman comes in, not only do I tell him, but the people above Jeff, our big cheeses, tell him to wear a mask, and he always refuses. And we used to be able to get away with using the breathing issue as a excuse, because we didn't have our original guidelines we have now. He would always we couldn't say anything to him if he had a breathing issue, which really bothered me, because if he has a breathing issue, why is he out in these possibly contaminated areas, making himself at higher risk of getting sick from the pandemic? So, but now that we have our own guidelines in place, to where we're private property and we don't follow the regular guidelines, it gives us more of a chance to prevent customers from using it as an excuse, like that angry guy did. And I think Jeff handled it really well. He doesn't let people push him around, because honestly, with angry customers, if you don't stand your ground, a lot of them will try and push you around. Unfortunately, there's really nothing that a cashier like myself can do about it. But Jeff really makes it a point to step in to help us cashiers who are in need of being, like, in case we need backup. And TJ's the exact same way. But the two of them are just overall great people to talk to, and I'm really thankful that they work at my place. And on our next week's show, guys, we'll be talking about something new, fun, and interestingly exciting.